almost nobody's like Steve Jobs, where you can sort of conceive of a new product due to the power of your mind and your intuition, and then fully formed, deliver it to your product team to go execute. Very few people are like that. Maybe a lot of people think they are, but the reality is, we need to kind of stumble around and explore the solution space through just experimentation. Before AI came along, it was quite difficult to do that. But now you can build a almost sort of professional looking, proof of concept in a matter of hours.
Hey everybody, welcome to the AI Speedrun podcast with CTO Patrick Leung of Faro Health. Patrick, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Patrick, I was, for the preparation for this pod, I was checking out some of the other interviews you've been to. And I think the thing that really stood out to me was, Faro Health is in the healthcare industry where there's a lot of regulation, lots of limitations for embracing new technology, but you guys have been at the forefront of really leveraging AI. How do you guys manage that?
Yeah, we are going through one of these once in a generation technological revolutions that pretty much disrupt everything. And so I think the only real way to do this is by embracing it wholesale. So really figuring out across our entire business, all the different teams and everything, just how best can we use this technology? And of course, I was brought on board to do this with our technology organization, our product. And that's what we've been doing, really, is just being really creative and experimenting and prototyping and just figuring out the best ways that AI can help make our product better.
When you're adopting or adding new models to, I'm not even talking about leveraging inside your technology, but more about employee productivity and making them faster. How are you guys adopting that?
Yeah, we're a technology organization, and in many ways, AI-based coding is at the forefront of applying AI to solve real business problems. It's this one of the most obvious areas because there's just so much value that can be unlocked by making programmers more productive. And we've been at this for a while, just playing with all the latest tools, Cursor, Lovable. There's a plethora of different AI-based coding tools out there now. And they have progressed quite rapidly to the point where we can use them for a range of different things, whether it's unit testing, whether it's building proof of concept prototypes or refactoring code and so on. So we're observing that they have the limitations. There are certain ways you can use them that make them more effective. And it's just a process also of people accepting wow, this is a new way of doing things that maybe goes counter to the way I've done things for my entire career. And yet, there's this firm belief in our organization that we can realize some really significant productivity gains by adopting this wholesale and really figuring out all the different ways that we can use it. And so I would say, yeah, coding for sure. Half our organization works on product and technology and so on. And so there's potentially a huge benefit for us, as I imagine there is for pretty much every technology organization in existence on the planet that's looking at these coding tools and benefiting from them.
I'm curious about, other than coding agents, are you seeing any other areas in your industry where people are adopting AI, where they used to do something very differently in the past, now they do something completely differently, much faster, much better?
Yeah, I think adjacent areas to software engineering, such as UX design. So in the not so distant past, last year or the year before, there was this tendency to kind of prototype using Figma or maybe Arcade. And that's kind of gone away now, where now we just go straight to code. We just use the AI coding tools. So they're being disrupted as well. We're seeing also with QA, it makes total sense to automate the generation of not just unit tests within the code, but also load tests, functional tests that are automated, and so on and so forth. So we're seeing a lot of automation on there. DevOps, there's a ton of kind of grungy work required to get IAC infrastructure as code working, lots of configuration files, lots of sort of essentially configuration files that can be generated automatically using generative AI. So these are examples that are kind of adjacent to software engineering. But I think looking broader, there's also some interesting things going on as far as generating marketing literature and coming up with the verbiage for customer outreach and lead generation and things like that. And so definitely well beyond the technical realm, in the realm of basically marketing, sales, and doing business in general, there's a lot of interesting innovation going on and people using this AI in various ways. It seems like every tool that you go to these days online, there's some kind of chatbot that we can go talk to it. And to me, that's the sort of the most obvious application. But in many cases, I think there's some more interesting ways you can apply AI that aren't so obvious.
Yeah, that is the de facto interface. But going back to what you said, it is really cool to see it's not just in engineering, but also the teams adjacent, like product design, marketing, where people are seeing a lot of productivity gains using AI. I'm going to share my screen now for the speed run part.
Oh, I'm excited. Speedrun sounds like fun.
Let's get into it. So AI has completely transformed our team's velocity. You can pick a number between 1 to 5, but you can't pick three.
Okay. So I would say closer to four, where there's certain areas that are super accelerated and certain areas that aren't yet, but I would choose four over two at this point.
Why is that? Why did you pick such a high number?
I think it's just because I see a lot of our engineers, a lot of our technical staff super excited about this. And I'm starting to see that, for instance, we gave this demo at the DIA conference last week. As part of my presentation was to show this really cool prototype that someone on my team built in 2 weeks that essentially models site budgeting for during a clinical trial, one of the many applications of AI that we have at Faro Health. And it was just stunning to see like how quickly he could come up with this prototype that essentially met the needs of the customer that we were talking to in a really great way.
So normally something like this probably would take like more than 2 weeks, right? Like months or longer to actually prototype that thing. And what you're saying is with a lot of the tools that are available today, your team was able to move much, much faster, finish the prototype in 2 weeks and have proof of concept. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think part of that four is thinking into the near future, by the end of this year. I think that the curve we're on as far as adoption and as far as realizing the benefits is such that I'm sure that by the end of the year it'll be completely transformed. But since I couldn't choose three, I rounded up to four.
One of the things you just briefly mentioned is about accelerating like clinical trials for your customers, right? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, Faro Health was really born of this insight that we really need, or the industry needs, a really powerful tool for designing clinical trials. Believe it or not, these are like $1 to $2 billion projects that might span 10+ years, right? And for the most part, they're designed in Microsoft Word. That just blew my mind when I joined this industry. I was just like, not even Excel? Like, come on, this is just crazy. And so Faro basically built this SaaS platform that allows people to very rapidly model trials, even complex oncology trials, and really receive really valuable insights regarding the complexity, the cost, and various other metrics that give you a quick idea, like, is this trial going to fly or not? And you can do this with existing trials or new trials. And so you can take an existing trial, enter it into the system or upload it, and then gain these insights that might say, hey, you're going to run into issues enrolling patients or, with the FDA or whoever. And so you really want to consider optimizing your design. And this is all AI driven, by removing certain assessments and making the trial more efficient and so on. So we published a paper with Merck jointly last year that basically outlined the benefits of doing this. And they can be upwards of $100 million in cost savings over the
Oh,
course of a
wow.
trial, just by removing unnecessary assessments and optimizing the design up front. So in general, in software engineering, it's sort of a maxim that, the earlier you fix problems, ideally in the design, before you even start coding, the more impactful and the more pain that you can avoid. And this is an example of that applied to clinical trials. Like if you fix these problems up front, which pretty much requires a very simple change, click, 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 you're done in a few seconds, really. And you can save $100 million+ and potentially months and months of delays. So this is a huge ROI. And that's really what we do at Faro is we apply AI to design better clinical trials for sponsors, for sites, and for patients.
It's a very similar theme to the part where you're talking about like prototyping in 2 weeks, where these clinical trials can take over sometimes over a decade, and people are spending so much effort and dollars into making these happen. It's important to know quickly if this is actually viable or not. So you guys not only helping people manage those trials, but also giving that intelligence layer so that people who are running these trials can get an understanding if this is going to be FDA approved and things like that before they commit more into that journey.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many stakeholders here, right? Like I mentioned before, it's the sponsor needs to make an ROI and quickly get to market at lower cost. The sites need to sort of feel like they actually can execute the trial as something that they feasibly could get involved in. It's worth their while. And then you have the patients. Like, oftentimes we see people designing trials where they just lose track of sort of how much blood are you taking from this person per day every time they visit the site? How many hours are they going to be away from their families and from their work? These are material things that can actually dramatically affect the enrollment prospects of this trial. And so as a result, many trials fail to enroll patients, or it takes way longer than they think. And like every day of delay for a clinical trial, every day costs $500,000 at least.
Wow.
Think about that. So think about like a 3 month delay, which is typical. 3 to 6 months is typical for like an amendment. If the FDA or whoever says you need to go back and change this trial, or you need to rethink
That
some
is
things and come back
bonkers.
to us, 6 months times $500,000. That's, do the math, right? That's almost $100 million right there.
Yeah, that's crazy. Moving on to the next question. Which part of the dev cycle is AI most helpful for?
I would say, honestly, I would say code gen, in the sense that if we include in that things like writing unit tests and doing refactorings and re-engineering and so on, that's just where the bulk of your effort goes. Like if you look at a typical software engineering team, it's not QA, it's not DevOps, it's not SRE, it's coders basically doing writing code, and the percentage of time they spend doing code reviews is smaller. Like code reviews are important, they're necessary, but really, I think it's the code gen. It's its ability, the AI's ability to, first of all, it's read everything out there on the internet. So it's read Stack Overflow, it's
Mhm.
read all of GitHub, public repositories, and so on. So the level of knowledge, as far as especially if you're doing something new that you've never done before. Like I've had situations personally where I've been coding and it's just dramatically speeds you up like 10 times, 20 times, because you don't have to do all this trial and error. It just knows how to apply these APIs or whatever you're using because it's seen everything. And so I think CodeGen.
So, in the past, like the bottleneck was that piece, right? So that is solved now with AI because you can generate much faster. Do you see the bottleneck shifting somewhere else in the pipeline where things could be better, things could be more improved or done faster?
I think that what's going to happen is that because it's so much easier to prototype now, that there's going to be a lot more companies adopting kind of the classic agile manifesto, which is just try stuff out. So I'm a big fan of Marty Kagan, who's this product management kind of consultant, expert dude in Silicon Valley, and he has this whole thing about dual track agile where you should be prototyping all the time. Like his one rule of thumb that he has, which I stuck in my mind because it's really clever, is you really need to prototype your idea. Once you have the idea, prototype it and validate it within 2 weeks. Because otherwise, if you don't do that, you run the risk of falling in love with your idea and being attached to it. So I really thought that was cool. But before AI came along, it was quite difficult to do that. And he was advocating like just use pen and paper, have somebody sitting in the corner making beeping noises, like whatever it takes to kind of validate the idea. But now you could build a almost sort of professional looking, proof of concept in a matter of hours. And so there's no need for have someone sitting in the corner beeping or doing whatever it takes, like because you can just build a full stack application that does that. Obviously within reason, but this is going to, I think, really dramatically change the upfront part of software engineering, where traditionally, like building a prototype of any consequence that people can actually click on and receive results. Actually, Figma notwithstanding, like Figma, you can build these clickable prototypes, but nothing's actually happening behind the scenes, right? And
Yeah.
so with AI, you can actually build an app of some kind where you can get feedback from users really quickly. And I think that's going to transform, that's going to move a whole lot of people more into this camp of like rapid prototyping and exploring the solution space through just, letting, what is the saying, letting 1,000 flowers bloom or something like that. And
Mhm.
so his principle is like, almost nobody's like Steve Jobs, where you can sort of conceive of a new product, due to the power of your mind and your intuition, and then fully formed, deliver it to your product team to go execute. Very few people are like that. Maybe a lot of people think they are, but the reality is, we need to kind of stumble around and explore the solution space through just experimentation.
I totally agree that like when you can prototype this fast, you can like test quickly your ideas, basically become more capital efficient. Uh, I'm curious though, like because more code is being generated, like not more code is being generated, but it's happening faster. Do you see like engineers spending more time on code reviews now because there's just so much more stuff to be reviewed in like a specific period of time?
Potentially, and I think that's an area AI could help out as well because some of a code review is sort of rote stuff. Now, obviously, we have things like lint and so on to take care of the sort of basic coding standard stuff. But in terms of idioms, for sure, an AI can help to figure out, hey, this design doesn't follow our, you know, whatever it is, Josh Block inspired API design principles that maybe can't be codified into something that like an algorithmic system could just validate, like a lint. But it takes some thought. But for sure I think it's going to help a lot with code review. And you're right. I mean, if we assume that, say, developers on average are going to be twice as productive, let's say, I think that could ultimately be kind of conservative. But let's say that it's twice as productive. Well, guess what? That means twice as many code reviews or twice the volume of code reviews per person. And sort of half the people to actually do those code reviews. So there's definitely going to be a need there. I agree.
Moving on to the next question. AI has changed what engineering skills we hire for.
Yeah, for sure. Um, using AI is not as simple as just talking to GPT and asking it the sort of basic canonical use cases of write me an email, help me write an email, or help me to do my homework or whatever. It's not like that. Like anyone who's tried vibe coding, will know, will be like kind of, nodding their heads hopefully. Like it's much more complex and, to build a full stack application. There's all these different systems that need to interact with each other. There's the state required for the AI to hold in its memory and its kind of state space is just way more complex. And so as a result, you see things like not just hallucinations, but also just forgets stuff or it repeats mistakes and does all these things. And so effectively wielding these AI, systems to write systems of any consequence is tricky. Employers are going to be looking for people who actually have demonstrable experience doing this.
Would you put this then at 4 or 5?
Yeah, I mean, I would put it as a 4 now, and I'm sure it's going to get to 5. Like, there's no question in my mind. I mean, as I was saying, it's sort of hard enough to hire data scientists where, have they actually applied LLMs, to solve this problem? But I think increasingly it's not just going to be data scientists where we hold this bar. It's going to be kind of everyone. At the risk of repeating myself across multiple podcasts, there's this quote by I keep forgetting how to pronounce her name, Ginny Romsetti, something like that, former CEO of IBM, saying, AI won't take your job. AI won't replace people. But people who can effectively use AI will replace people who don't. And now I have this like little, my own version of that, which is organizations that effectively apply AI systematically throughout, as a way of doing business will replace organizations that don't, which is sort of a special case or a restatement of, the innovator's dilemma. We're all being disrupted by AI. Every single business on this planet is being disrupted by AI, pretty much.
Has that then changed? Like when you hire engineers, when your teams hire engineers, what questions they ask or what skills they're looking for? Has that changed at all?
Not yet. Not yet. I mean, I think, as I mentioned before, like we have obviously we have a data science team. We're an AI company. Definitely, like now, the ability to apply LLMs in very specific ways is required. And I think what I'm seeing now is that any future hires, we want to make sure that people are at least open to this and seem to have the requisite curiosity, if not experience, just the openness and the curiosity to actually want to do this. These are things that we're going to be looking for. And I think there are certain positions, perhaps like in DevOps and QA, where we really will want people to have done this.
That makes sense. Moving on to our last question. Favorite AI tools that you personally use or your team uses?
Yeah, I mean, these days, Cursor is the kind of like on the spectrum of no code to heavy duty coding kind of AI based coding solutions. I think Cursor is way out there on this is designed for hardcore developers. That's a variant of Visual Studio Code, which everybody uses these days, and it has all these AI features built in. But there's an arms race going on right now. So who knows, I think the switching cost isn't super high. It's not like you get sort of really kind of locked into using any of these tools. But right now, Cursor seems to be the most popular one that we're using, combined with Claude 4 Sonnet. But we'll see. Maybe in a few months it'll be different. Like there's constant innovation going on in this space. So I think that's the obvious one. And there's various other tools that people are looking at and playing with. And, we've definitely played with Lovable and some of those other no-code kind of vibe coding systems. But I think that there is benefit in having everyone use the same tool, and so we can tailor our internal trainings that we're putting together for AI-based coding for that one tool set. So for now, I think Cursor is it.
Like right now, the cursor is great, but it could be something else tomorrow that could be so much better and help
Yeah.
you become really fast.
I mean, that is the remarkable thing about this whole LLM, large language model revolution, is that, in the old days of data science, meaning, 3 years ago or more, it was all about training a model. It was all about, hey, what's the secret sauce? Oh, I've got this special deep learning model we put together that's trained on all this data and it solves this problem, predicts something useful. And now that's just gone out the window. Like now, like almost nobody has the capacity to the computing resources and time and resources and sort of money to be able to train their own foundation model. And so maybe there's some kind of market out there or some kind of opportunity to produce smaller, like small language models. But for the most part, we're just fine tuning and working with and prompt engineering with foundation models. And I think in some ways that's really liberating because it means you don't have to build this hardcore team of people capable of creating their own deep learning systems. It's just a matter of having people who are really skilled at applying them. So yeah, what that means as a result is that it's really easy to adopt new AI tools and configure them for your own purposes.
Yeah, made it super accessible. Patrick, how can people find you on the internet?
LinkedIn is probably the best way. You can search for me, Patrick, Faro Health. You'll find me and my company. And we post a lot about the various things happening on. So feel free to connect with me there. You can also go to our website to find out more about what Faro Health does. So it's just farohealth.com.
Amazing. Patrick, thank you so much again for being here. It was awesome jamming with you today.
Thanks so much, Faraz. This was a lot of fun.